Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, a lot of moves around the entire league, and the Suns surprised us as well. They brought back a fan favorite, and they added a new face that might have just completed the whole entire roster. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Tuesday. Happy July. Don't forget, Locked On Suns free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. So just hit that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer. Get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We're going to break down the two moves the Suns made, one player they're losing, and what it all means next. Joining me to do just that, as always, from the Wild West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member, how are we feeling? Ben Garcia.
The NBA ruined free agency, man. You could argue, you wouldn't think this because you're a bit of a basketball nerd. You like, building in the draft, the down and dirty.
No,
like
it
I
sucked
like
today.
I love the drama. I love the drama. This was awful. And this is kind of what you and I were expecting. And a lot of people, we weren't different here. It's just like there was one or two teams with cap space. I was a little, this isn't an Atlanta Hawks show, but I was a little surprised by how little Nickeil Alexander-Walker got. I thought he'd get more, but overall, it was a dud, man. Just an absolute dud. And we didn't talk about this yesterday, but DeAndre Ayton cut. Couldn't have been more right there. Hilarious.
The Suns didn't sign Nigel Hayes, who we're about to get to here. I thought we might just have a last segment where we could just crap talk DeAndre Ayton for a little while, but,
hey,
we won't have to do that.
Yeah, we won't have to. But the funniest DeAndre Ayton story in Portland was when he got snowed into his house, and they basically just said, just stay home, DeAndre. We don't even need you at the game. It's just the funniest. So DeAndre. Anyways, that's your DeAndre Ayton bit for the day. We can get to something else.
Well, so 2 one-year deals for the Suns on Monday as free agency started, 3 p.m. local time here in the Valley. And one was expected, one was a little bit more off the beaten path. Let's start with the guy we did expect back because I do think it's a big one, and I think it's a guy who will play some minutes here this upcoming season, finally, thanks to Mike Budenholzer being long gone. Collin Gillespie. So
I'm stoked, man.
Yeah,
Sorry,
1 year
continue.
deal. We don't know exactly, right? So he was a restricted free agent because he was coming off a two-way. So anyone off a two-way is a restricted guy, and he could have gone for more, years. I mean, right? So to me, this is good for the Suns to get him back, but this is also Gillespie betting on himself and saying, I'm not really trying to get a little measly 3-year, hey, you get $9 million guaranteed. Congrats on a nice little run. Cool. You're, whatever. He's saying, no, I'm going to get a role this season. I'm going to run with it, and I'm going to be more expensive next year, and I'm going to be hitting the market again. So I think it's awesome that he's doing that on his side, and the Suns still get him for another year. So win-win.
I'm stoked to have Collin Gillespie back. You and I talked about this yesterday with the Chris Paul stuff. I like Chris. If he would have been here, it's starting to look like that's probably not going to be an angle where he comes to Phoenix after Gambo. Almost squashed that. I'm excited to see a backup guard come in, play with some pace, I got an argument with a Suns fan today who was like, Gillespie's not better than Chris Paul at anything. That's not really the point. That's not really the role we're asking of Collin Gillespie to come in and light it up in terms of a stat sheet stuffer. Can he play?
He also is better than him at a couple things. If we want to really, nitpick,
I did get into that. I also said he's a better defender, better rebounder. At this point in his career as well. Shooting
and
the
he
basketball.
shot at 43% last year, So it's like Chris is a good shooter, but I mean, it's not like Gillespie's some kind of, guy that's going to get played off.
It's just not fair to call Gillespie so at that point, call it a wash. But I feel like at this point, it's not fair yet. But I do agree. I do totally agree with you. I'm excited to have someone come in, and you can kind of see the trend of this Suns team it seems like they just got a bunch of guys that care and maybe aren't the most skilled players. We'll get into Nigel Hayes in a second, but I like bringing back in a guy of Collin who's trying to really establish a role in the NBA, and then bring in Nigel Hayes, who we can get to again in just a second, who is someone that is trying to stick in the NBA, like guys who are glue guys, and we're trying to change the culture here, which was kind of gross over the last couple of seasons. So I'm stoked, man. I think it was a good day overall.
And one other, agreed. One other part that I would say between Gillespie and Tyus, or between Gillespie and Chris, or whatever is, he also does what you were talking about Chris not doing when we brought it up yesterday, is he's going to play fast. He's going to, get a hit-ahead pass, and he's going to just play with a level of, I think, like, force that isn't really what Chris has ever done since, whatever, he was a kid in Charlotte or a kid in New Orleans. So, like, that's going to be a great attachment and complement to what the team's identity is becoming. That's all right. The banner cuts it off, I think. You're good. You spilled, but that's all right. I think the Gillespie part of it is great. He sneakily had a 4.2 to 1 assist to turnover ratio.
I saw that.
This dude was, it's a crime. It's one of the many crimes that Bud committed against the Phoenix Suns last year, that he just could not get this guy off of the bench no matter what he did. But, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, I saw this today from Sam Cooper of the Timeline podcast. Statistically, a better rebounder than I think it was Royce as well as Kevin Durant. I can't find it.
Rebounder. Yeah,
offensive rebounder.
He was one of the best ones on the entire Suns.
That's hustle, man. That's what the Suns need.
Last thing on Gillespie that I would say that is, like, it's splitting hairs, him and Chris as shooters. Like, obviously I was kind of teasing too, but whatever he is compared to Chris doesn't matter. What he is on this team is badly needed shooting, because this team is really light on that right now. And the fact that he can make them off the bounce, he does it a little bit of a slow release. We saw that. He's not going to be exactly Damian Lillard from 40 feet or something, but he can make them, and he will take them. And that's going to be big for this group. So definitely needed to get him back. He will play a role. Gambo has already confirmed what all of us were assuming with that, and that will be nice to see. He is still only 25, even though he's an older rookie and everything else. Nigel Hayes, he played a year in Denver that doesn't get counted on Basketball Reference because he never played in the NBA. Yeah, he was just in the G League that year. So yeah, he was drafted in 2022, I want to say. And then he didn't end up coming into the league.
Dude, good pull, man. Good pull. Season. I wouldn't have known that. I thought it just, if you were in the league, you're in the league. But okay. Yeah. Good pull. Good pull.
Yeah. So Nigel Hayes, this is a guy we've all probably remember if you're at least of a certain age. He was at Wisconsin. He was pretty good, pretty highly sought after recruit, but he was one of these tweener guys right as the league was kind of changing, where if you couldn't shoot, you were screwed. And so he went overseas, and he basically turned himself into a solid three-point shooter and rounded out his game. He was at Fenerbahce the most recent 2 seasons, and he won EuroLeague Finals MVP and basically got to the absolute pinnacle of dominating that league, which is the second best one in the entire world, and 38% on 5 attempts from 3 the past 2 seasons. He basically figured that out and has been able to just impact the game in a variety of ways. He's 6'8", 7'2", 7'3" wingspan. I mean, it fits exactly what the Suns have been looking for with Fleming, with Dunn last year, with any number of the dudes that they brought in, Ben. So I don't know exactly. I think it'll be a matter of how he looks in training camp and in the preseason of what his role is. But he's 30. I would imagine he's not coming over here if he doesn't think he has a decent chance to play some basketball and get back into the league and actually prove himself, not just come over here and have a better place to live or whatever. So I think he could be a real part of this team, and he definitely fits what they want to build.
I'm really curious what his role looks like on this team. Is he the backup 3 on this team? I doubt he plays power forward, but a big guy, 6'8", 7'3" wingspan that, again, fits the mold of what the Suns are doing. And the Suns are just getting bigger. And what I really like about this guy, too, is, yes, I mean, like, I couldn't tell you about his character. I don't know what he is. I would be curious to know how many other teams were interested in him. But still, the Suns team is committed to getting bigger. And what I really like about him, and I mentioned this a second ago, is he's trying to carve out a role in the NBA. If you don't think this guy is going to come in every single night, bust his ass, he knows this is his last chance probably of sticking in the NBA, or the way he's going back to the EuroLeague.
Yeah, 7 years overseas to get to this point.
That's the type of culture change that I think the Suns are pretty clearly going into. They're not really investing as much into like the me guys who, or maybe not really bought in guys. I wouldn't put Kevin Durant in that boat, but maybe other players over the years, Eric Gordon, maybe Tyus Jones, also in that boat. This guy's going to come in. I think he's going to do everything he's going to be, what he's asked to do.
Yeah.
I can't call him a 3-and-D guy yet because we haven't seen him in 7 years in the NBA defensively. So maybe he's a good defender, maybe not. I'm really curious what his role is. If there was a lot of people after him, you would think that he was guaranteed, like, hey, you're going to play 10 to 12 minutes a night. And that might be more than someone else. That might have been what bought him over to come to the Suns.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to think he would come over just playing 5 minutes a night. I don't think that's the case because when Gambo, when Gambo tweeted out that the Suns were going to go after a lengthy wing, a lengthy athletic wing, I was like, who's going to sign for the vet minimum? And it's like, this makes sense. So I don't know what his role is going to be.
Yeah, you mentioned like you don't know if he has great character or whatever. I mean, of course I don't either, but I would say it says something about you if you're able to go overseas and actually improve and work your way back into this position. I mean, it's something we always say, oh, he's going to go, try and improve his game over. Most guys don't get back here. You know what I mean? We say that, and then they end up just going to some team, and then they just play over there forever, and we never hear from them again. Like, this is pretty cool. He's 254 pounds, so I don't think he doesn't rebound well enough from the stats, at least, to think he could play the 4, but he might have to because we'll get to the roster at the end here, but, like, they don't exactly have a lot of guys that are pure 4s besides Fleming, and he's a rookie. It's pretty raw, so it might be that they envision him as being able to play some 4 and chipping in there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much he'll play. I don't know that answer, but I think that he at least fits the identity, and that's the best thing that you can say.
Identity.
Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say. David Nash on Twitter, the 4-Point Play, he pointed out a report from last summer that the Suns had been linked to Nigel Hayes all the way back then. That was where I was going with the identity thing is they've had their eyes on him as a fit here and somebody that they wanted to take a chance bringing back to the U.S. and back to the NBA for at least a year now. So that tells you something, too, about their level of excitement about him. He's not just maybe a flyer, but somebody they really believe in. Let's get to the other move that was widely expected. Cody Martin gone. He will not have his salary guaranteed. What does that mean for the Suns financially? Next. First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Summer sports are in full swing, so whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I'll be at my move, which all of you guys like to make fun of me for, brought me a little closer to the Chelsea bar here in the Valley. It's like literally 2 miles from my house now. I will be there on Friday evening watching them in the FIFA Club World Cup. There is also, of course, the U.S. as they continue to try to win the CONCACAF Gold Cup. A lot of soccer action. But as I always tell you, check the W for the big favorites. Thursday night, the Liberty hosts the Sparks. They are minus 900. If you're new to FanDuel, download it now or go to FanDuel.com. Put $5 on that Liberty game. Huge favorite. Very good odds. If you win, $150 in bonus bets straight to your account. Open the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling here. So we were wrong. Let's start there. We were reading the cap sheet a little bit incorrectly yesterday, and we will correct that now. So Cody Martin is in fact gone. But I think, Ben, if I'm understanding correctly, what may have been mixed up in the thing we were looking at versus the reality of the situation was Mark Williams and Common Maluach probably were not included. Either way, where the Suns sit now is that they are. Am I right at $10 million over the second apron after cutting Cody Martin? I believe that's the number.
Should be 10. I'm gonna look at it again to make sure.
So we agreed there's no need to keep him, and now they brought Nigel Hayes in, who can just easily be a replacement. That part is not really an issue. We were like, okay, maybe if they are just able to trade Nick Richards, that's it. They're in. They're under it. They're at least under the second apron, and then maybe from there they could get under the first, depending on how aggressively they want to go. But now that this is all sitting here, it's looking very difficult for them to even get under the second apron, as far as what we've heard reporting-wise of what they're willing to do and what the market looks like for them here, Ben. So we may just be in a reality where it's another straight season for the Suns of a lot of these hard penalties and harsh realities of not being able to make moves and being really, really strapped.
Yes. And that's where the conversation comes into play. Like you and I talked about this today. Last night, just so we're clear, my opinion has changed now that we know how much the Suns actually need to be to get under the second apron. Yesterday, we thought cut Nick Richards, they get under the second apron. I would do that because Nick Richards or trade Nick Richards, because Nick Richards and Cody Martin don't mean a lot to me when it comes to this team. However, it seems like the most ideal way to get, or the feasible way to get out of the second apron, is by trading Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. And you and I kind of gotten over this back and forth through text message. Explain to me, like we did in the chat earlier today, why the Suns would need to get under the second apron outside of helping Matt Ishbia's pockets. Because I'm of the belief, I know the penalties. It doesn't seem worth it to me to just get rid of Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal for nothing. Now, if they get something back from that's a different conversation. But just dumping him for nothing to help Matt Ishbia's pockets, I'm not necessarily interested in that. Explain to me why you think differently.
So let's just, go back through what the restrictions are for the second apron period, right? Like that's kind of the point here. So no sign and trades.
Yep.
You don't have any mid-level exceptions, just minimums. Although, of course, I would agree that one is not really relevant at this current point in time because the Suns roster is basically full. So, but that's part of it. No trade exceptions. Well, the trades are impossible to make anyway, so that part's not that huge of a deal. You can't take any more salary than you send out. That's what we've run into time and again. You can't aggregate salaries, so you can't trade multiple players together unless one of them is on the vet minimum. And then at the end of each season, your picks get frozen. You can't sign buyout players. Probably not that relevant, but that's one. And then the frozen pick thing. So, it doesn't get talked about a lot because it's just not an asset the Suns have the ability to use, but that's because of them being over the second apron. The 2032 pick, which I don't know if a team has traded it yet. I think maybe somebody did today. That was the Denver deal, right? They traded their 2032 pick for Cam Johnson. The Suns cannot do that. Their pick currently, it just is in the sky, in the clouds. It's frozen. And then if they're in the second apron for too many seasons in a row, I believe it's 3. Any 3 years in a 5-year period, including 3 in a row, which is what the Suns could potentially be headed for if they don't figure it out next summer, then they get sent to the end of the first round. So we're not to that part yet, but even the frozen picks, it limits what you're able to do in trades and everything else, as we are already seeing. So to me, it's just, if you can find a way to get that done, it just makes all the next stuff easier. Whenever you do have to dump Beal, whenever you do want to go out and maybe take a swing for a better player as these guys age, all that stuff just gets a little bit easier once you're out from underneath of that and more flexibility comes your way. So I'm not in an insane rush where I'm going to take awful trades just to do that or eat too much money a Beal and all the things we've talked about. But I also do think there's clear value in having that flexibility. Otherwise, why would all these teams be trying to do it?
I totally see the clear value. I totally see the argument to that. I don't see how right now the positives outweigh the negatives. And what I mean by that is the Suns right now are not in championship contending mode. They're not even in Western Conference Finals contending mode. They're in, if they have a incredible season, their championship is making the second round. And that seems pretty far-fetched too. If that's the case, unless you can get something for Royce and Grayson, maybe you get a bunch of second-round picks for Royce, maybe 2 or 3, then yeah, I'd probably think about that. Grayson, if I get a first-round pick for Grayson or maybe multiple seconds, again, I'd think about that to get under the second apron. I don't just want to dump them because they're I think they're valuable players, at least on this team. Royce O'Neal, their leadership factor, and the fact that he was pretty good last year and plays a small forward position. Suns don't have an abundance of those players, I would say, right now. And then Grayson Allen, he is a 3 and not negative D player. And so I kind of like him to be able to spot start when Booker inevitably has a soft tissue injury. I don't want to start Collin Gillespie. So when I think about that, I'm not really interested in signing and trading right now because I have it all written down right here. Mid-level exception doesn't really matter. Suns don't have picks to trade, and I don't want them trading any, so that might be a positive. No bringing back in more salary. That's pretty difficult to do anyways. Can't aggregate salaries. They don't really have the salaries to do so. Frozen picks, and then, of course, the end of the first round thing. I just think next year it'll be easier to get out of the second apron because Bradley Beal then becomes an expiring deal where it's not a valuable asset, but it's not a horrible asset either. I'd say it's right in the middle. You're going to have $50 million coming off your books. Maybe you can trade him next year. Maybe not. I think it might become a little bit easier. Same with Royce O'Neal. Same with Grayson Allen. I think it becomes a little bit easier to trade those guys with less years potentially on those deals.
It's just less total money. Yeah,
exactly. So that's why I'm not in a hurry to do it anymore now, kind of similar to you are. I just don't think the positives outweigh the negatives for now. Now that can change, but that's where my headspace is.
I think if there was any market for Royce or Grayson, we would know it by now.
I think that's why Gambo said that they're both going to be here. I don't think the market's there.
So it's the same kind of thing as when we talked about Jalen Green when the spin immediately after the KD trade came down of like, oh, they're going to keep him. It's like, well, did they decide to keep him or did the league decide that they were going to keep him for them? You know, and that's kind of where we might be with the Grayson situation. I mean, it's 54.4 million over the next 3 seasons for Grayson, and it's about 22.6 total for Royce. That's just a lot of money for guys who, they have value. I think in particular, Grayson has a lot of value for this roster, and I said basically as soon as we saw what this roster was going to look like, hey, I probably would just keep Grayson at this point. Royce, a little less, but based on the clarification that we now have on the money, Royce doesn't even get you there. You're still like $100,000 over, and I don't know what easy thing you have there at that point to do beyond that. So I would say, I guess Royce and Nick probably gets it done. So maybe there's a path during the season because you only have to worry about being under by the end of the season, really, especially if you're talking about the frozen pick. So maybe there's something at the deadline that could make it palatable here. But yeah, and well, go ahead. What else did you have?
No, that was it. I just don't think that those outweigh that. I hope I didn't. Yeah. I wasn't acting like I was trying to jump over you for a second. But the other thing that you had mentioned as well is the frozen picks. I don't really see that as a problem right now. Like, I don't think the Suns. Now, here's this. Maybe the Suns are going to pull maybe the Suns are planning to pull a rabbit out of their hat next year. This is nonsense. Don't take it seriously. But they want to sign Luka Doncic next year. They're going to somehow bring him to Phoenix. Maybe the Suns are planning something big like that where then you could make the argument of, okay, we don't want to be in the second apron 3 years in a row because then you talk about frozen picks and Luka's going to get you there with how much money he's going to make. Maybe if the Suns are planning something down the line, then I get it. Maybe you sell off Grayson or Royce for nothing. And I'm sure you're right. I believe Royce and Nick does make it past there.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I'm just not seeing it. So unless they're planning something big for the future, I don't think that's the case, man. I think we just stick it out for one more year. And I think things get easier next year to move off of, especially that Beal deal.
And just looking at it to clarify again, since we were wrong yesterday, it looks like Spotrac doesn't have Fleming. It doesn't have the money fully correct where they got a little bit more with Green and Brooks than they did with just KD. And it also doesn't have Malawach. I think all of that together gets you to basically where the difference is. I'm not sure why they have it set up like that because it makes it very confusing, especially Fleming.
Do we know if Fleming's going to be a two-way guy?
Well, he's not even listed anywhere. Neither is Brea. Like they're just like not even on the whole page. It just makes it tricky to see it out all laid out. But anyway, that's the thing. But speaking of Royce, I think he's an interesting guy to focus in on when we look at the last segment. because the roster's basically set. What is everybody's role going to be, and how are they going to play? We basically have our answers to that because there's not going to be too much more change here on the 15 men that are going to be on this team opening night. So what can we learn next? Closing out the show. All right, let's get to it. 14-ish roster spots filled, Ben, at this point. We don't know exactly what Brea will be. We laid out yesterday that they basically were working with 13 as far as we could assume. They added Nigel Hayes. That gets you to 14. We don't know about Nick Richards. We don't know for sure about Grayson or Royce, but we just laid out why it's most likely that they will be back and why Beal will be back. So that gets you to 14. Even if they sign another dude, and I would imagine they will, why leave a roster spot open? That's probably not a guy who's going to play basketball for this team. So let's just start right here. Like, what are you thinking as far as the starting lineup? As far as we can tell.
I don't think there's a world where you can't start Jalen Green and Devin Booker. But I have kind of contemplated really quickly of just like, what would it look like with Jalen Green coming off the bench? Like, what would it look like? But I don't think there's a world where you can, if Brad is still here, where you could bring both guys off the bench. But I think
that's where I'm
pretty,
at.
Yeah, I think pretty clearly, though, the starting lineup is Book, Green, both handling some of the point guard duties. Small forward position will be Dylan Brooks. I think you're going to start Ryan Dunn at the 4, and I think you are going with Mark Williams at the 5. And then you're talking about the guys after that who would play. So Malawach, I guess Bradley Beal. What I think is what I am curious to know, where not Kobe Brea, where does Fleming come in all this? Is this going to be a developmental year for him, or is he going to be fighting Nigel for minutes and Royce O'Neal? Like, we kind of have a log jam here.
Exactly. That's why I mentioned Royce as the lead in here. Is I'm not really sure. I think he might be a guy where he plays in October, but by January, February, less so. You know what I mean? And I think I think that's why they'll be hoping that they can trade him by that point, because it's not even just a second apron thing. It's just I don't see a reason for him to be on this roster. And for him, like, he's 32 years old and he's already declining a little bit, I think you would have to say, physically, athletically, from where he was in Utah. So he probably wants to keep having a chance. He's never won a title. Like, I think that's probably where that's headed. I don't know. Fleming is quickly becoming probably the single biggest X factor, Ben, to me, because there's a world where if he's just good, he could start.
And I think you have to,
because they need it, and they want size. Like, they've been telling us ever since Brian Gregory's press conference that they want size and they want two bigs. And Fleming is the only guy that can play the 4 for this team who you could really call a big. Like, the other guys are just wings who you kind of throw at that position because you got no one else.
You know what makes this so much easier is if you send Bradley Beal home, because then I think you can just go big. Like, throw Royce O'Neal at the 2 spot. Obviously, these are backup positions. You can get a little bit more fun with this stuff. But throw Royce O'Neal at the 2 spot. Throw Fleming at the 3 spot. Like, that's where I think it gets a little bit more interesting, man. And I think, yes, Royce O'Neal is the X factor if we're including Bradley Beal being here. And I don't want to make this into a can they trade Bradley Beal discussion, but I think things get a lot easier if they move him out of it. Because
just whatever way he's not playing, it's easier for the rotation, for sure.
And plus, wouldn't we rather Royce play over Brad for multiple reasons? I think he fits better. And once Brad stubs a toe and is out for 2 weeks, I don't want to continue to acclimate the roster to him and learning how to play around Beal. Royce O'Neal's just more of an Iron Man than Beal is. So I know Royce is like the X factor in this, and maybe I'm just stockpiling forwards and we should just get rid of Royce and take a loss on him. But I think that point plays as well, where I think in February, teams who are going to be looking for 3-and-D guys on the cheap, they're going to look at Royce. And I think that's another way that they're going to get into the second apron then. But I think it's more Beal, man, because I don't want to be in a position where I'm having to play Bradley Beal. I'd rather have to play Royce O'Neal. So it's an interesting logjam between those guys. But I can't live in a world where you traded up for Fleming. You had him reported as a top 20 prospect, and you don't play him. You invested in him. He needs to see the floor. I don't want to make this a developmental year for him, especially for a guy that's coming in a little bit older.
21.
He's 20. Oh, he's 21. Okay.
I believe he's 21.
I think just so we're clear, I think he's just about to turn 21, or he just did. Because I saw a scouting report on that.
July 10th.
There you go. See, I remember seeing a scouting report on that.
Yeah, by opening night, he'll be, almost 21 and a half. So yeah, I think I think the 10 guys who will play on opening night is going to be Book, Green, Brooks, Dunn, Mark, Malawach, Gillespie, Beal, Fleming, and then one of Royce or Hayes. That's where I'm at right now. That's 10. But
I'm just sorry. I'm thinking, so I don't mean to be quiet, but the rotation was already there. The rotation was already there, regardless of Nigel.
I didn't say Grayson. I didn't say Grayson in there. So that I knew I was jumping the gun on somebody. So probably Grayson over Royce in that one, maybe. Or Grayson over Beal if Beal just isn't on the team or gets sent home. And
I like Royce, man, but we can't be sitting Fleming, because by this time next year things do get interesting for the Suns. You could potentially move off of Beal. You could potentially become a little bit more of a seasoned team and have a more well-rounded roster, sprinkle the money around a little bit easier. I need Fleming to be ready for that.
If some of these guys hit, it's not crazy to think Brooks could be on the move. You could at least be exploring the market for him. If Hayes can play and he's 1/20th of the cost or 1/10th of the cost, and Fleming comes along and Dunn takes a leap, like at that point, maybe Brooks isn't even there. So yeah,
exactly.
It's going to be an evolving thing over the course of the season for sure. And you would want the vets to be playing less.
Yeah, I need those guys to be ready for potentially the Suns taking that next leap next year, where maybe we're talking about our championship this year is the semifinals, or really probably just the first round. Maybe the next year we're talking about, I'm just talking, but Western Conference Finals. Like, I want those guys to be ready for that. I don't want to be developing guys next year. This is the year to compete and develop, and I think you got the right guys to do that. So, like Malawach and Fleming, those are no-brainers. They have to be here. Also, just so we're clear, you mentioned that open roster spot. I don't want to let your guy just go away. It's probably for Jalen Bridges. He was there during the press conference.
Yeah, he should be. It's another wing. Like, why would you give up the chance to just see what he is? You know what I mean? And they've already filled 2 of their 2 ways, I believe, and then Brea might get the other one. So you probably want to go that route there. So yeah, the last thing I would say is just how they're going to play. We don't know everything. I think just the overall size is a big part of it. I think that you would feel optimistic that as a result of that, with Williams and Malawach, with Jalen Green getting downhill more, with hopefully some more innovative stuff and transition opportunities, that Book can get downhill a little bit better than he has in recent seasons. They were 30th by a mile in terms of rim attempts this year. That has to go up because they're going to be a worse shooting team. They're probably going to be a collectively worse passing team, you would think, without, Tyus had his limitations. KD wasn't any sort of, point guard. Beal is what Beal is, but that's still a lot more playmaking than a bunch of rookie wings out there. So
that's a good point.
It's probably going to need to be like easy points at the basket to help this offense stay afloat with those limitations that are going to come in here.
No.
And then, at the same time, I think the other way that they're going to try to win games is, we talked a ton about how awful this defense is. I don't think it's crazy to think that this could be at least a league average defense next season, even with its youth. So if you're talking about, hey, maybe it's like the 15th offense and 19th defense, that's a decent team. And I think that they have the tools to do that if they put everything together the right way.
Just so we're clear, man, look at last year's roster compared to this year's roster. It is just, now obviously the talent probably on that roster, like you could argue, was definitely better, but I think you could even argue this one as well, maybe on par. I know they had better star power, but this team, they're bigger, they're lengthier, And I think what Brian Gregory Matt Ishbia said at the end of the year press conferences or whatever, that you're going to know that you played this team. Now, I agree to you to an extent that the scoring's probably not going to be there like it was when you could just hand the ball to KD. But this team's going to be forceful, man. They're going to push dudes. They're going to run up the fouls. They're going to make teams earn it. And you know what? That's going to be fun to watch. Because last year, we had a bunch of guys who kind of seemed like they checked out halfway through the season. And this year, I think you're going to have a bunch of guys diving on the floor, hard fouls, and games might be, instead of 130 to 90 in the fourth quarter, maybe it's, even though they're losing, 110 to 98, and it's just a different feel. And I'm not, and again, just so we're clear, I'm not pushing this team out of the way from not being a playoff team. I think there's a world Booker goes supernova Devin Booker and can carry this team into the playoffs. Any further than that,
well, I just mentioned 15th and 19th just as like a ballpark, like that would put you in line with like where Dallas and Chicago were this year, and they were 39 win teams. They were kind of right there in the mix. So, that's assuming a lot of things go right. I think for that benchmark I just set to actually come to fruition, especially the offense, I would say, but it's not impossible. And if you look at, as a final note from me, just like zooming out and looking at the league, size continues to be at an absolute premium. When you're looking at Luke Cornett getting $40 million,
that was crazy.
Wemby, and you're talking about Clint Capella getting $22 million to be the fourth big man in Houston, and what Brook Lopez got, and on down the line, like
what did DA get?
Yeah, nothing. But the Suns were right to follow this trend, because they told us they were going to. They did, starting on draft night, and the league is absolutely speeding toward that direction more and more, and the Suns have the tools to match it, which they didn't at all last season.
That make you feel better about the Mark Williams trade? You were never really on the fence, but does it make you feel even better about it because you see the trend in free agency?
The problems with it for me weren't really like on court. I mean, he has to develop, but every young guy has to develop. To me, the risk of it is just about his health, his next contract, his value, and what do you do with him and Malawach together? It's not. I think he could be a solid player. I think he'll be at least on offense. I think he'll be a pretty productive center for them. Get offensive rebounds, finish at the basket, help set screens to free book up, all that sort of stuff. It's just like the kind of big picture of that trade. But I can't complain with what the finished product looks like, and it's so much closer to what the NBA is right now and what we just saw in the finals, for instance, than the freaking Tyus Jones, Big Three, and Nurk lineups we started last season having to watch. So
hey man, Nurk just got a great deal with the Jazz, man. He's coming back with a vengeance, baby.
Yeah, he's still cashing out on what
him and DA.
What Joe Cronin gave him. Yeah.
Dude.
All right, that'll wrap us up. Hit follow, hit subscribe. We'll be here all week as the aftermath and fallout continues from the NBA off season. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll talk to you next time.